first thing to get out of the way is that this is not a Navy or military bashing video. This is actually, as the thumbnail says, a cautionary tale, but one to pay attention to. It all started innocently enough. I'd just gotten my first mini 4K DJI drone and was in Monterey, beautiful day, back in February of 2026, not that long ago, when the first part of the heat wave was going on. So it was a beautiful day, like today. And I started out at a little beach in Monterey and went to fly my drone, and of course DJI app told me that I couldn't launch it. Turned out I was right next to a hotel. So it gave me some suggestions, and so I chose one of them, and it turned out to be Monte Beach, 5 miles up the road. I know that in Monterey there are military bases, Fort Ord and Naval Postgraduate School and all that kind of stuff. But I was under the assumption, which is why I'm telling this story, that number one, the DJI app would not allow me to fly if I wasn't allowed to fly somewhere. And secondarily, I would assume that if I was not allowed to fly in a certain area, there would be signs. Both of them turned out to be false, which is why I'm telling this story. I started out on this bench right here at Monte Beach, which is a very well-organized public beach. People all over the beach, kids, dogs, couples, the whole deal. There's no signage, and my DJI Fly app let me launch the drone right from this park bench. As you can see on the screen capture, it is right up against the barrier where you cannot fly because you're near the Naval Postgraduate School. Totally fair. The problem is that when you get too close to the barrier, which is down this way, the Navy's gear, there's stuff that pays attention to things like drones flying around the area. Your drone will ping off of their system and alert them that someone is messing around where they shouldn't be. As it turns out, when you look at the footage, I lifted my drone up right here off the park bench, and it was initially aiming in this direction. That's all it took to alert the Navy and get me and my drone in potential trouble. As you can see, all I did was fly up and down the beach. I just wanted to get some nice shots of a beautiful day in Monterey. Brand new at drones. I've used them in the past, but not really. Certainly not with as good a photography as they take now, videography. So I was just wanted to capture a little bit. I think I was out here for about 35 minutes, something like that. Went up and down the beach maybe twice, maybe 3 times. When I got back to my truck, 2 naval police officers were waiting for me, and they informed me that I was being detained. No handcuffs were involved, but I think if I'd have been a jerk, might have been involved with some handcuffs. They made it sound like that anyways. So they said I was detained, and they went on to explain to me that I had pinged on their radar or GPS system or whatever. As soon as the 2 officers came up to me and told me why they were there, at first I thought it was a joke, but once I realized they were serious, I immediately put the tailgate down on my truck, pulled out my iPad, grabbed the SD card, and scrubbed through all the footage to show them exactly what I was doing and that I meant no harm, and I didn't at all, as far as I was concerned, go into any restricted areas. When the police officer that was standing there looked at the initial footage where my drone was pointing south, he immediately said, "Oh, that's what triggered it right there." And I said, "But I was here at the public beach. There was nothing going on. I didn't do anything." That was enough for them to call their lieutenant. So their lieutenant showed up after being in traffic. I explained to him as well, and I had once again scrubbed through the footage to show them what I was here for and why I was here in this location, and that I had initially not even planned on being in this location, but the DJI app is what got me here. I don't want to say they didn't seem to care. As far as their rules went and them talking to their other superior officers, it didn't matter. So the rules were the rules, and I get it. I get it. It was annoying, but you know, they understood that too. Turns out they were going to confiscate my drone. There was also potential for me to get a citation, even though the DJI app let me fly it, and there was not a single sign, and I was on a public beach. I was on the public beach walkway. There was no way that I did anything illegal on purpose. So as it turns out, I was detained for almost 2 hours. There was a lot of paperwork, as you can see. They took the drone, they took the battery, and they took the remote. So I thought the whole entire thing was pretty outlandish and certainly unwarranted. Ended up talking to the sergeant and a lieutenant about the whole deal with the FAA database that informs the DJI app, as well as the simple use of signage. Even one sign would have kept me from flying in this area, no doubt about it. And I think that's the case for most people. After the officers and their lieutenant left with my drone, I got a phone call almost immediately from a sergeant who introduced himself and told me the situation, wanted to make sure he had a good phone number for me. They needed to reach me. So I explained to them, or to him, that, as I explained to the other officers, that if I had seen a sign, or if the app wouldn't have let me fly, I would not have flown. And he said, well, there are signs. And I said, where? So he told me the signs were down on the beach. When you go down on the beach, that's what he said, you turn around and there are the signs. And I said, well, first, I didn't go down on the beach. I was up on the walkways, as you can see. He then informed me that the next step was that they needed to get the drone over to a third-party separate entity, part of the Navy. It was being turned over to the NCIS. Once again, I thought he was kidding. Turns out he was not kidding. I wanted to ask him if Mark Harmon was going to call me, but I didn't think that would go over very well. I then asked him, if you've taken drones before, have you returned them? And he said, yes, in the past. And I said, okay. So without giving me, I know you can't give me anything specific as far as dates, but what am I looking at as far as a time frame? I remember I only had this drone for less than a month. The answer he gave me was not real fun. The answer he gave me was months. He said it would at least be months before I would see the drone, and he made sure, as the other officers did, made sure that I knew, because he said, if we decide to return it to you, if we decide to return the drone to you. That's what he said. Not a real happy thing to hear. So when I hung up with him, I immediately started filming the entire little area of this beach, the public part, and as you can see, there's not one single sign at all. Nothing that says don't fly, because like I said, I never would have flown. I'm a brand new amateur, so I'd be too chicken shit to fly my drone. I ended up getting a text later that day from a lieutenant telling me that if I had any questions, here was a phone number. I was pretty happy that the very next day, about 24 hours after this incident, I was contacted by a very nice NCIS agent. She was very nice. She asked me questions and let me fill her in on what I had experienced and the whole deal. And she told me she would be back to me. A week went by, hadn't heard from her, so I called her. She appreciated that I was following up, had a few more questions, informed me of some of the things that she had learned. It was obvious that her department, and her specifically, she was not well versed with drones and the FAA and the whole DJI app and allowing you to fly and not allowing you to fly, all that stuff. So I kind of gave her the information that I had discovered. Again, amateur. I didn't have all the answers. Didn't have a lot of experience for sure. She appreciated the information I gave her. Another week went by and I called her again. I had it on my calendar to call her once a week. This time she said, with all the things going on in the country right now, she was referring to the escalating war in Iran at the time. She said that it was not on the priority list. Great, just what I wanted to hear. So I understood that, and she said something I didn't want to hear again. They kept telling me things I didn't want to hear. She said, feel free to check in with me every couple of weeks, and I'll let you know what's going on. I sighed and put it on my calendar for 2 weeks later. When I called her back, I left her a voicemail. She returned my call a few hours later. I was in the middle of something, so she left me a voicemail with some actual good news. She said that the NCIS was done with their investigation and they had no more use for my drone. She gave me a phone number and a name of a police captain, a Navy police captain, and she said to give him a call on the coming Monday, a few days later. And she didn't say he will give you your drone back, but she said he's the one who will talk to you about your drone. So I waited. Monday was yesterday. I called him. He was very nice. And he said, I'm sure you want your drone back, unless you want to give it to me. Made a joke. So I said, sounds good. So I made an appointment with him for today. Today is Tuesday. And I showed up. I was escorted in. The appointment was at the Naval Postgraduate School. Obviously, with everything that's going on, I'm sure it's like this anyways, but they were very tight on security, which I totally understood. So they checked my ID, all that stuff. They escorted me onto the facility, and I met with the captain. He handed me my drone, and we talked for a little bit about everything you've learned on this video, and he agreed that it was a gray area, and they were aware of it, and they needed to do something. And then he again reiterated to me, which is why I'm doing this video in the first place. He said, be very thankful that you're getting your drone back. Usually the Navy never gives a drone back. He didn't know why, and I asked him why they were giving me mine back, and he said he didn't know. I don't think he was privy to that information. But the fact is, you gotta be aware of where you're flying, even if the drone app, whichever drone you're using, even if the drone app lets you fly, use one of these other apps I'll put here on the screen and double check. Don't just use the app that you're flying your drone with. Double check other drone apps that may be a little more current or a little more finite when it comes to where you can fly and where you can't fly, especially. So that's what I recommend, just so you don't lose your brand new drone and end up spending money by buying a bigger, better drone like I did. So I can blame the Navy for making me spend more money on a bigger drone and getting more into drones than I would have gotten if they hadn't taken my drone in the first place. Anyway, good luck with flying. Stay away from Monte Beach in Monterey. So learn from my ignorance and don't lose your drone. Make sure you check out where you're about to fly before you actually fly your drone. I got lucky.